Thanks to Card Market for sponsoring this video.
Hi, I'm Marsh from StrataGames. This is me and Peter doing some commentary. If you didn't see our previous video going over the Swiss from this event, you should make sure to check that out. We are now in the top 8 for the Win a Duel event a couple weeks ago at Cards on 6th in Lancaster, Ohio, a little bit outside of Columbus. And I was lucky enough to make it into top 8 at 6th place, I believe, with a 3-2 record, which was okay. I barely skated in there. And of course, I'm on the Rainbow Black Sack list that I've been playing a lot. There's tons of videos on the channel. Make sure to check those out as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, we are up against the Grixis Affinity Pilot that I just played in and lost to get into the top 8, or like the last round of Swiss. So what are you thinking about this matchup, Peter?
Yeah, I mean, again, your worst matchup. You have already lost to it once.
Yep.
and that it probably did not feel very good when you saw that you were immediately paired up against Grixis going into this round. But we had a donut before, so a little energy boost. Maybe a good luck donut.
Yeah, donut shop right across from the card store, so that was nice. But yeah, felt a little demoralized going up against Grixis Affinity, losing pretty soundly, and then immediately getting repaired into the same exact player in the top 8. Definitely made me feel like I was going to be going home pretty immediately. But
yeah, we'll see how it goes. Right? There's no real 0% matchup.
No, I mean, if you get a good start, especially on Black Sack with very aggro start, you can beat just about anything. And obviously, they can always draw really poorly. We are going to 5 here, it looks like. I didn't really catch the first hand. I think it was like a 1-lander that I wasn't willing to keep. And this was a 4-lander with like even a bunch of bad cards. Even if the cards are very good, 4 lands is never really keepable.
Yeah, and this is an interesting situation too, where you know what your opponent's on because you've played against the deck already, and usually you don't have that information until post sideboard. So you really do have the opportunity to sculpt your hand for this specific matchup. So what are you looking at for this matchup that you really need to play it out?
Yeah, you're definitely right. You get that little bit of info, so I could have a hand that's like maybe keepable in the blind, but not keepable here. Unfortunately, we just mulliganed a couple bad hands. So I was looking for a fast start. I did keep on 5 cards. I kept 2 Swamps, Nested Shambler, Supernatural Stamina, and Mortician Beetle. Now, Shambler Stamina is a great combination, of course. No sack outlet makes it really rough, but we actually see we get the Carrion Feeder here off the top. So with that, the Stamina and the Beetle, I actually have a pretty good 5-card hand here. We can make a whole bunch of squirrels. I have the choice here of playing the Beetle or leaving up the Stamina. I opted to leave up the Stamina because I don't want the Carrion Feeder to die to just like a Galvanic Blast. Yeah,
Refurbished Familiar feels rough there.
Yeah, mulligan to 5 and then a refurb is pretty brutal. We lose a Shambling Ghast, which would be able to pick off the refurb, or notably, of course, a Crookland Shaman before it gains Death Touch. We got to pitch it because I need the Stamina and I think I need the Beetle.
Yeah. Now I imagine that Grixis Affinity struggles to deal with a board of 1/1s, with the exception, especially pre-board, of their Krarks. But I feel like that's a potential way to steal it, is just, again, create a bunch of 1/1s, tack in, hope they don't draw the Krark. And even if they do, you could potentially just get your sacker out of range.
Yeah, for sure. They can play a lot of cheap blockers usually, but yeah, if you have 6 1/1s on the board and they only have 2 blockers, it's not that big of a deal. You're right. Like 1 Krark, even without Death Touch, can wipe all the 1/1s, but then you make a giant Carrion Feeder and you're not in a bad position here. They do play the Kirkland Shaman, so of course our board is not looking to stick around here very long. We cast the Mortician Beetle, and they're going to respond by sacrificing the Wellspring to the Krark, and we're of course going to sack most of our guys to our feeder.
Yeah, which is wise from their part, to prevent you from getting those counters on your Beetle there. Because landing the Beetle and then doing these sacks would potentially get both of your creatures out of range of what they can do. But now the Affinity player, this is a great example of Krark is not free, right? So they had one artifact to sack, but at this point they would be sacrificing their lands and really setting themselves back.
Yeah. Being able to sacrifice the Wellspring is good. Obviously, they get a card out of it, but they're still in the early development turns where they really want to be able to have an affinity count high enough to play Mirror Enforcers. So sacrificing that Wellspring is still detrimental to them this early. We even end up getting a second beetle here, which obviously would have been great if we had all of the squirrels to pump into them. But unfortunately, they just have a second Krark and a Toxin. And I believe we had been talking about this matchup on the way to get that donut. And I think at this point, I looked over to you and said, this is exactly why this is the worst matchup for us. We had a pretty good start on a mulligan to 5 and 8/8 Carrion Feeder, a couple of beetles, and we just lose to a Kirkland Shaman. I could probably have just scooped it up here, frankly, but I'm not much of a quitter, even though I know the game is pretty much over.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, with the refurbished familiar too, it was basically a mold 4.
Yeah, exactly. Like operating on such constricted resources, like we did pretty well, I would say.
Yeah, and now your opponent's just playing out their affinity game plan, right? They had the 2 best cards against you. I think they drew one of them on like their opening hand. Like you would have been able to get through one Krark, not both, and definitely not Toxic. But I feel like this is a really funny example where your deck still came really close.
Yeah, this is like games like that are the games where I realize just how broken Black Sack is. Like, of course, it folds to some very playable, very highly played cards in the format, which is why it's not like tier 1. But sometimes it can feel like absolutely insane. That was a mulligan to 5, like you said, with the refurb, probably more like a mulligan to 4. We had a Carrion Feeder, 2 beetles, a couple pieces of fodder. A Cursed Marauder was like a 2-mana removal spell that didn't even grow our guys because we didn't have the beetles at that time. And like, we were 1 turn away from winning the game.
Yeah.
Maybe, if they didn't have the Krark, but they had a couple chump blockers, they could survive a couple more turns. But like, if they did not have the exact combo that crushes our deck, I think we could have gotten that game, which is crazy impressive from a deck that had such a low card count.
Right. Yeah, they just needed everything in that matchup. And so I know this is a repeat of playing this matchup before. What are you hoping to bring in again in this matchup?
Yeah, so again, we're bringing in the Blue Elemental Blasts and the Masks of Law and Grace. That's the whole point of the sideboard. The Rainbow sideboard was to fix our worst matchups, this being our worst matchup. We have 6 cards dedicated to giving protection from red or being able to counter a red spell. So our goal is to keep our Kirkland Shaman off of the field with the blue blasts, or to preempt a Kirkland Shaman by putting a Mask of Law and Grace on like one giant creature. If we get a couple beetles and a feeder like we had in that game, it might not be as good to have the Mask of Law and Grace, but we did have one like 8/8 feeder. If we had been able to just protect that, they probably could not have stopped us. So yeah, so those are the cards we're looking to bring in. We're probably taking out the Accursed Marauders because they don't do that much. And maybe the Fling and Temur Battle Rage. I can't remember exactly what we sided out.
Yeah, I would be interested to see if the opponent would be bringing... certainly they would be bringing in Extract Confession if they have it in sideboard, right? Because they just want all the removal they can get. Extract Confession destroys your biggest creature, which often is like your big sack creature.
Yep, Extract is really good against us. Occasionally it could be awkward if we have like a Vampire, which stays at 1 power if we haven't sacked anything. But it's great against Carrion Feeder and Beetle, so I assume we will see those if they brought them in. We have a pretty good aggro start here, though. We start with a Beetle, because I have 2 of those, and if they want to like bolt it right away, I'd rather lose that than the Feeder. We have a Feeder and a Link Breaker, and they go for the refurb. We discard a Swamp here. We also have that Mask of Long Grace in hand, and no Treasure Maker until we top deck the Shambling Gas here. So I'm off to a very fast start here, and definitely some interesting choices here. So the Shambling Gas could pick off a refurb. It could sacrifice to make a treasure, and we could immediately Mask of Law and Grace something. And I decide not to do either of those things because I have 3 creatures I'm trying to protect, not just 1, 2 beetles and a Carrion Feeder. And so if I go for a Mask of Law and Grace, they could kill the other ones. And if we Shambling Gas to pick off the refurb, then we don't have a way to interrupt Krark Clan gaining Death Touch. So we just swing with our team here, opt to sacrifice the Link Breaker and the Mercenary because they block with the refurb. So we now have 3 3/3s and a way to protect against our Krark Clan Shaman. So I'm actually feeling really good here.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. Yeah, with Shambling Gas, the ability to remove the Krark Clan before it can gain that Death Touch, so that, because at this point, with the amount of artifacts your opponent has, it's pretty hard for them to clear your board without that Toxin Analysis. Especially if you just get one more sack in, especially since Shambling Gas would count towards a sack. They have 4 artifact counts, so they'd be clearing out their whole board, basically.
Yeah, and if they did that, they could eat like a beetle, but I could still sacrifice one of the beetles to keep the
Oh.
other beetle and the feeder to be 5/5s. So like they could kill a guy, but they would not wipe it all. And if they lose their whole board, they're definitely going to die to 2 5/5s.
Yeah. The spell bomb here. Do spell bombs make you nervous at all when you're playing this matchup? People bringing in graveyard hate like that?
No, not really. I mean, Spellbomb's usually something they're going to be playing main deck, so they probably just kept him in. And I think it makes sense for them too. I think we talked a little bit in the last episode or last video that Spellbomb, Fairy Macabre, it is something to keep in mind. Of course, if you go for a Supernatural Stamina, it's going to get interrupted by those. But usually they're spending an entire card, or Spellbomb recoups its value, but they're spending an entire card to stop like half of a card because our stamina, if it pumps Shambler, we're still getting +2 squirrels, so it doesn't really matter that it doesn't come back. And so it's something to keep in mind. If I draw an Unearth here, I'll probably end up cycling it. Supernatural Stamina, I would probably just use to give +2/+0. But I'm not too worried about it here.
Okay, so Extract Confession here. They're exiling their graveyard, so you have to sack one of these creatures.
Yep. So one of your creatures with the highest power, all of our beetles and our feeder are all 3/3s. So I get to choose which one I want to sacrifice. And of course, if I sacrifice any of them, the other beetles that survive will get a counter. So I have a choice if I want to sack the feeder here to make 2 beetles that are 4/4s. I decide not to do that because I still really need to have the ability to sacrifice this Shambling Ghast at any time to be able to pick off a Krark. That is always the number one priority, is keep a Krark from killing us. And ideally, I'll find some more fodder to grow the feeder, which I do 100% with this Infestation Sage. This actually makes it so we have lethal, which means I can even swing with the Shambling Ghast and they're not allowed to block it because they would die.
Yeah, and again, that's one of the advantages of having familiarity with this deck, right? Like you know what your threat is. You know that Shambling Ghast is essential to keep around, and a sack outlet to keep around. I would have been tempted to take to have two 4/4s because you see your opponent's board with a 3/3. It potentially applies the most pressure if you don't draw another sack outlet, which you did not have in hand at the time, or not. Yes, something to sack. So I could see the temptation to keep both, and I might have kept both if it were me, incorrectly.
Yeah,
but I think the right play.
I think that's the right play if you're assuming your opponent has nothing in hand, right? And obviously they had 3 or 4 cards or something. So like, if I hadn't drawn any fodder, if I just drew a swamp there, my Carrion Feeder would not have been able to attack, so I would have lost some pressure there. Like, if I attacked with it, I would have been forced to sacrifice the Shambling Ghast to keep it alive against the Ultra Monitor. I don't want to do that. And so I could have gone for the Beetles so that I have that pressure now. But then again, if they have that Krark, I lose on the spot. And that's always what I'm trying to avoid.
Yeah. And it's interesting. It's kind of a play pattern that you grow into as you become more experienced in Magic, where you are looking to view your opponent's board. If you're in the lead, especially with an aggro deck, you kind of have to start asking yourself the question, okay, how does my opponent get out of it at this point? I'm ahead on board. I have the potential to run them over. But what cards do they need to turn around, and how can I prevent those cards from being able to turn them around the game? And again, the answer in that matchup is going to be Krark.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, we were so far ahead that Krark was the only way they could probably win. Maybe if they just drew like 3 Enforcers they could land on the field, they could stabilize that way too. But more than likely, it was going to be a Krark Death Touch, and we had the answer to that on board. There's going to be a lot of shuffling and mulliganing because this, remember, is when he goes down to like 4 cards.
Yeah, which is rough.
Yeah, it is, but it's the only way I was going to be able to, unless I got the exact same start I just had there. It's pretty much the only way I was going to win this match.
Yeah. I was so during this game, I was sitting there watching this take place and watching your opponent mulligan. And it's tough. I mean, you kind of start to watch your opponent starts to kind of die inside a little bit as they're mulliganing, because they're realizing that this matchup, their shot at winning the duel, is just kind of dissipating as they are mulliganing. And every hand that they look at and is just not keepable, it's just It's hard to watch, but it's just a part of Magic, right? I mean, you mulled to 5 on the first hand and got Refurbished Familiar in the first game of this matchup. So it's just a reality of Magic, and it's one of the blows you have to take as a Magic player.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the worst parts about Magic is getting land screwed, but I think one of the best parts about Magic is the land system because it allows games. Games are just too smooth. If like there are a lot of other games that people play that they always say like, "Oh, I prefer this resource system to Magic because like." Someone was just telling me about sorcery, which I've never played. You have a separate draw deck for your lands versus your spells. So you can choose to draw from either one. So you never get land screwed because you can just draw a land if you want. I'm sure that makes it so that you don't have those lows of really terrible games that you get screwed out of. But I also feel like it's going to take away a lot of the highs of like, oh, I mulliganed to 4 and I won this game,
Mm-hmm.
or like I kept a one lander. And one of my favorite stories to tell is keeping a one lander against familiars. I had one land for 10 turns and then I still won that game. I would not have that story because I would have just drawn a second land.
Yeah.
So I understand that it sucks. Of course, I've gotten tilted millions of times by not drawing the right number of lands, but it's also just the best part is when you're able to overcome that obstacle.
Yeah. Yeah. The variability is a feature, not a consequence of the
Yeah.
land.
So we see our opponent finally keep a hand on 4 cards here. I believe it's a Bridge, a Karkland Shaman, an Utra Monitor, and a Reckoner's Bargain. So only one land.
Yeah. Well, having Krark is a valuable one to have, which is nice. And top decking the land there gives the opponent a chance.
Yep. And we start with a Shambler here. We have our Blue Blast, and I think we might have a Treasure Maker in hand, as well as a Carrying Feeder. So, like, I can kill this Karkland Shaman, and I know they're not going to want to sacrifice their lands. They're so low, like, you never want to, but they're also so low on resources they can't really afford to.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's something that I can definitely play around with. And we go for a Carrying Feeder, the Greedy Freebooter, and I sacrifice it to the Carrying Feeder right away. They don't even think for a second about sacking their lands, which I think is definitely the right call. We scry something to the bottom here, and we just go for the Blue Blast on the Krark because I don't want them to untap and have Toxin Analysis, obviously, but even like Ichor Wellspring or something else. And of course, they top deck the Krark right away again.
Which is, again, is probably one of their best draw. Well, maybe not in this situation.
It's one of the cards they need to get out of this situation, but unfortunately, it's not in the right order. Like they would have much preferred like an Ichor Wellspring into a land here, and then the following turn getting a Krark would have been okay. And I go for a play that looks kind of goofy here, I think, which is I attack. They have a Krark on board, and I go for a Supernatural Stamina when I attack here with the Shambler. They could sacrifice a land here and wipe all the squirrels I'm about to get, but if they sack a land, I'm going to be in such a good spot that I'm not too worried about that, honestly. So we get in for 5 damage here, and I know once I sack the Shambling Ghast, or excuse me, the Nested Shambler, we're going to get 3 squirrels, have a 3/3 Carrying Feeder, and the Shambler back. That's a 2-turn clock exactly. So I've really amped up my clock as fast as I possibly can.
Yeah. And now you have look like 2 Bloodthrone Vampires in hand.
Yeah.
What was your reasoning deciding not to play one out, just so that you could recover if they do end up deciding to wipe the board?
Yeah, their best draw is a Toxin Analysis, and if they do Toxin, it doesn't matter how big I make my guys, of course. And I'm winning this game so heavily right now that I don't really think I need to commit more to the board. And if they do get that Toxin, I'm going to need to draw some fodder to go with my vampires. But if I play one vampire here and it gets caught up with the Toxin Krark, and then I play another one and they Galvanic Blast it, that's probably going to be the end of my game. And so I'm giving myself 2 more opportunities to recover from a board wipe here with the vampires in hand.
Yeah. And there your opponent just drew 3 cards per turn and did not draw a land.
Yeah, they bargained a land instead of bargaining the Krark. Obviously, Krark's kind of what they need, but they did not hit the land drop.
Yeah, I imagine what your opponent was thinking was like, okay, I need to draw Toxin now.
Yep.
So Toxin Krark is the only thing that gets me out at this point, and I just need to draw to it.
Yep.
And sadly, that was not the case for them there, or luckily for you, that was the case for them there. But it's a tough place to be in when you're the opponent and you lose the 70-20. And again, you can see the frustration from the opponent.
Yeah, I mean, I don't blame them. Like, again, we just made it to top 8, and it's we're 1-1, the winning game for going on to the semifinals, and you just mulligan into oblivion. It does not feel good. Um, it's not how I prefer to win, obviously, unless I got lucky and had like the same type of start that I had game 2, and they had a mediocre start. Like, it's kind of how I needed to win when they were on the play, but yeah, it's not really my favorite match of, my favorite game of Magic that I've ever played.
Yeah. That being said, you kind of fought off the final boss there. Now, I know that up next was either you were going to be playing against Elves or Ruby Storm.
Yep.
And between those two, what was your hope to be playing against?
I definitely was hoping to play against Elves. Both of them were players that I played against already, so like I was a little familiar with. And I think, as we talked about with Ruby Storm, I don't think it's a terrible matchup for us, but it's a lot higher variance. Like, they were able to go off on turn 3 against us in that first match, and I'm probably never going to be faster than a turn 3 unless I'm on the play and I have my god hand of a turn 3 win, which occasionally happens. So if they go for turn 4, I think I can often beat that matchup. But I think Elves is just one I have a lot more agency in. It's not just about, does my opponent draw the nuts? It's a lot more like, if I get a nice removal spell, if I can slow them down with killing the Priest of Titania and their Timberwatch Elves and their Mana Dorks and stuff, I think it's just a matchup I'm a lot more comfortable with.
Yeah. You have a potential you have cards that answer their Elves combo. You don't really have much that answers the Ruby Storm combo. I mean, a little removal here and there, but that usually is not enough to slow them or to stop them completely.
Yeah, definitely not as much. And with the blue elemental blasts help a little bit, but countering one of their spells is not usually what's gonna get us there.
Yeah, and it looks like here you were getting ready to roll the dice to see who goes first, but we don't do that in top 8.
Yep, this is one of my biggest mistakes I make every single time I'm in top 8, is that literally after someone says, yeah, it's top seat gets to choose, I still am like, okay, high roll, because I'm a creature of habit.
Yeah.
But that was not the case. I believe I was the higher seat here with 6th place. I believe they were at 7th place. And we didn't actually say, the Elves player did in fact make it to one against Ruby Storm. And so that is what we're playing up against. So my wish came true. And we keep a pretty nice looking 7 here. We do have 3 lands, but a Carrion Feeder on turn 1, which, since I know I'm against Elves, I have no fear that I can just play that out and it's not going to get killed right away.
Right. And I would say this game 1 comes out to, in my experience, and it may be different for you depending on what list you're on, but in my experience, I find that it ends up feeling like almost a 50-50 matchup game 1 before sideboard.
Yeah, I think that's probably pretty accurate. I think it's very dependent on, as fast as Elves can be. I think it's, we're the beat down here. I think it's how fast can we go and how much removal do we have. And if it's a mediocre speed and not much removal, we're usually going to lose that. And obviously, the faster and the more removal we get, the more that shifts towards us being favored.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like opponent here is trying to see their hand. Looks like they're trying to decide what kind of accelerant to play, because that's all what Elves is all about. But here, a turn 2 Winding Way against an aggro deck feels pretty bad.
Yeah, they didn't have a 1-drop, which already was a good sign for me. And then that, because they didn't have a 1-drop, as you can see, I just went all in. I played 2 Nezumi Link Breakers, and I immediately cashed them in to make my Carrion Feeder a 5/5. 5 damage on turn 2 is pretty dang strong, and they didn't have a blocker on turn 1. With Winding Way, they didn't have a blocker turn 2. They literally had to discard a couple cards, so the Winding Way didn't even do them that much good here. And we can have them almost dead next turn if we draw the right cards here.
I would say that it looked like the opponent kind of fell into the trap of keeping a hand that can play cards, but probably can't survive this matchup. Without having any accelerant, with a Winding Way on turn 2, they were really depending on drawing. And even there, we see that they end up discarding 2 cards at the end of turn.
Yeah. They did say pretty quickly that, because we already did play, they were like, I know you're an aggro deck. I made a mistake in keeping this hand. I should have mulliganed this hand knowing that it was against you. And that happens. Sometimes they're just like, yeah, it's an okay hand in the blind. But you got to remember, if you're not in the blind, maybe it's not a keepable hand.
Yeah, and nothing against your opponent. They played really well all day. They got to this point, but mulliganing is one of the hardest things to do in Magic, quite frankly, especially after you've been fatigued after playing. However, so this will be their seventh game of the day.
Yep.
It's a challenge,
Yeah, for sure.
and and in a hard matchup, right? Because this is a matchup that they're not super familiar with. Obviously, they played you once earlier today, but I don't believe they were super familiar with it when they played against you the first time today, and so now they're coming back a little more familiar with it, but still a hard matchup to navigate.
Yeah, and I mean it's definitely not like there's pretty much no decks in any format that you're going to know 100% how to play against after one match. So if it was the first time they'd played against it, or even if they played against it a couple times, they're definitely going to still have a lot more to learn here.
Yeah.
They go for a Mystic and a Nyxborn Hydra for one, just to have a couple of blockers, which is totally fine by us. But of course, we have an Unearthed Greedy Freebooter, some more fodder. We're going to be able to make them chump right away here.
Yeah, and this is not where Elves wants to be at.
No, I think once we get to the point where they have to chump block one or two creatures every single turn, that's almost always game win. Like from this position, it's almost impossible for us to lose. But theoretically, if they are able to flood the board with like 3 elves every single turn and only lose 1 or 2 of them, they could make some ground and maybe get there. But it's not looking great for them for sure.
Correct. Yeah, and yeah, they don't. Elves doesn't really have the advantage of having a like Kark that just goes off the turn that you play it. Elves is really looking like 1-2 turns ahead, especially with just like the summoning sick creatures, and so like the route is probably like Priest of Titania, and some elves to turn it around. But even that's not immediately actionable. It's like it's going to be a turn behind. So you forcing them to chump some of those creatures is going to really slow them down.
Yeah, so they block the Carrion Feeder, but they take the Beetle. I end up making it a 4/4, which means that it's going to be lethal next turn, which is my goal. And so now I know that they're going to lose 2 creatures every single turn. With only 4, maybe 5 mana if they have a land, it's going to be pretty hard for them to play enough creatures to stay alive and make any progress, like we were talking about.
And you can see your opponent right now is looking through their hand, and they're like, okay, I have multiple avenues I can go down right now, but do any of them actually keep me alive? And I would say in this case, as an Elves player, no.
Yeah.
There's not really much coming back from that.
Yeah, they definitely were thinking about it. There's nothing wrong with that. I think we saw a Monstrous Emergence that they had drawn, which could be a really good card in this situation, but it was just a little bit too slow. Like, there's no way they could kill the Carrion Feeder, even with an Emergence. It was too big. And even if they pick off the Beetle, then...
Oh, that's interesting. Monstrous Emergence main board?
Oh, was that game 1?
Yeah, that was game 1.
Maybe it wasn't. I thought that's what it was. I don't know why I thought it was game 2 already. It was probably something else. I don't play elves. They all look the same. They're green cards. And okay, it probably wasn't a Monstrous Emergence because that actually could have done some work. It could have killed the Beetle if they had like a Generous End, and they could have chump blocked the other guy. But anyway, moving on to sideboard, we get the classic, put in a bunch of snuff outs, and take out our red splash. So nothing fancy here, unfortunately, but snuff out's just too good in the matchup.
So yeah, and going into sideboard, it's a little tricky for elves. So elves usually is running some removal in sideboard and Monstrous Emergence.
Yep.
As well as sometimes Lignify, and I know this opponent is running Lignify in sideboard, which is like a fine removal spell against you. The sad thing is that like comparing a mono black deck of bringing in removal versus a mono green deck bringing in removal, the quality of removal is so much greater in black. And so, like, really, mono green, you're bringing in removal spells that are pretty mediocre to hopefully turn a corner. And really, your deck is already resilient against removal pretty well. So even bringing in sorcery speed, kind of mediocre removal spells, it's kind of tough. I think Elves has to bring it in because there's a chance that it blows you out, but it's not optimal. That's for sure.
Yeah, 100%. It's worth bringing in for them, but you're right. Like, I mean, there's no secret that black gets way better removal, but we have 0 mana, instant speed, unconditional in this matchup removal versus their 2 mana sorcery speed removal that they either need to have a creature big enough, with their Monstrous Emergence, which, even with a Generous Ent in hand, might not be able to kill a Carrion Feeder if it's a 6/6, right? And then Lignify, which is decent, but it doesn't get rid of counters. And it does not, it makes it an 0/4, but very luckily for us, it does not make it a defender. So it can still attack. And if you put it on a beetle that's already got 5 counters, well, you've just buffed its toughness a whole bunch. That's really all you do there. And you stop it from gaining any more. But like, if it's got enough counters already, it's not going to make that big of a difference. So
Yeah, and it's a creature you can sack too. So even if they're putting it on early onto something that hasn't been pumped at all, it's like later on that's just fodder for you to sack.
Yeah, that too. They spend an entire card and they give us the value of, you've been turning our beetle into a Village Rites or a 1/1 counter on our Carrion Feeder.
Right. And so yeah, it's kind of tricky. And the way Elves runs as well is it really is kind of a combo-esque deck, where I would say it's more of a mid-range deck that runs a combo, even if it's not like an infinite combo, but kind of a combo-y strategy. And with you bringing in removal, there's a real potential that you could just disrupt that combo pretty handily by just removing a Priest of Titania, or even just like early Mana Dorks can really slow down Elves quite a bit.
Yeah, the combos you're mentioning, of course, is Priest of Titania and or Timberwatch Elf with Quarian Rangers, basically. So if you tap Priest for 4 mana, lead the Stampede, find a Quarian Ranger, you can cast that Ranger, untap your Priest of Titania. Now it's making more mana. And then if you can find more Quarian Rangers, you can continue to go off. And that can end up with you casting a Generous Ent or a Nyxborn Hydra for 10 or whatever in the same turn. Or you can do a similar thing with like Timberwatch Elf, where you just then pump something for +10/+10 or whatever.
Well, it looks like you're both keeping 7 here, which is...
Yeah, luckily for us, didn't have to mulligan too much. They do have a Llanowar Elves right away, and we have a Carrion Feeder, which I get a little overly confident with, I guess, because they do have the Monstrous Emergence now that we're post sideboard. They don't play a land, which is good for us, but they do kill off our feeder, which obviously sets us back a little bit.
Yeah. And again, that's exactly the position that a Monstrous Emergence looks good, right? Not the greatest removal spell, but in that situation where they're on the play and they're 1 turn ahead of you, it looks good. But you see here that your opponent is on 1 land, as well as you. You both kept 1 landers.
Yeah, I mean, I think 1 landers, as we talked about, Black Sack can keep often. I think us losing the Carrion Feeder, luckily they didn't play a land, because that meant that we basically both did nothing for that turn. If they played a land and killed our guy, we would be way far behind here. So luckily that didn't happen. But we have another Carrion Feeder in hand, and I opted not to cast it because I was worried there could be another removal spell right behind it. I need to be able to protect it a little bit more.
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. And now here, even with the 1 lander, and this is a hard matchup to keep 1 landers, but opponent kept it on having the removal spell, which I understand, and having the Mana Dorks. But even on this 1 lander, your opponent is about to produce 2, 3, 4 mana next turn, if you don't remove any of their things.
Yeah, I don't think I have any Snuff Outs or any removal spells in my hand. Otherwise, I would 100% be killing the Priest of Titania. If I had a Shamblagast, I would spend it here. But instead, we just get to play a Beetle. Carrion Feeder, sack the Greedy Freebooter for a Scry. I really want to be able to Scry to set up that Swamp, which I believe I did find on the top. And then play a Beetle here. So I have the potential to go fast here. But because we also have a Supernatural Stamina, 2 Staminas, I believe, and a Shambler in hand. But of course, we're not killing the Priest of Titania. And so they go nuts here a little bit, play 2 Dorks before tapping the Priest of Titania, which can then cast the Timberwatch Elf. And suddenly they have 5 creatures on board.
Yep, you get to basically build a board by playing your elves for free, your dorks for free, because the Priest of Titania pays for them once they're out.
Yeah, it's pretty good. And I guess I made a mistake. We did not scry to the top because we would not have kept another Supernatural Stamina. We must have scried to the bottom and did not find that land, which is really bad for us. So we have 3 Staminas in hand with 1 Shambler. That could be a lot of squirrels, a lot of power, but Timberwatch Elf, Priest of Titania going nuts over there that I can't stop.
Yeah. No, and so at this point, it feels like you're pretty behind. Do you feel like your keep was like the correct keep looking back?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it was probably not a good keep. I think if we hadn't lost the Carrion Feeder, it would have been basically the same, I guess. If we hadn't lost the Carrion Feeder, but they played a Priest of Titania instead, and I still didn't have a way to kill it, I guess I would have been attacking one turn earlier because them killing the first one made me hesitant to play the second one out.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that one turn would have made enough of a difference. Of course, we were hoping to draw a land or a removal spell here, but if you don't draw what you need to, if not drawing what you need to means you lose the game pretty much 100% of the time, then it's not a good keep. We still have some play here. It's not like we've automatically lost, but like now it's really hard to attack in, right? Because Timberwatch Elf can give +5 at least. So even with our creatures being able to grow pretty large, it's probably going to be really hard to attack in. So yeah, I think this was probably a bad keep. I think I should have, like, if we had kept almost the same hand, mulliganed down, lost a card, kept a very similar hand, but had one snuff out, this game would be easy, I think.
Opponent just produced 8 mana, so they're going to make a 7/7 Hydra or a 6/6 Hydra, putting it onto an elf, which makes plenty of sense. They're turning around and trying to put a clock on you, which I think is 100% the right choice. They don't want to give you a chance to draw out of it. You still have a lot of cards in hand. Top decking a land. There's that. You have the potential to turn the corner, especially with a Nested Shambler out there. So you're probably feeling pretty good when you draw that land. Not good in like I'm going to win at this point, but like, hey, I actually have some play now.
The land helps for sure, and it helped that they didn't attack because I think they probably should have swung with the Hydra elf. They might have been worried about us, like, I guess, like, could we have killed them if they tapped out fully? Yes, we could have with 2 double stamina, because stamina gives 4 additional sacrifices from a Shambler. So Shambler's 2, 4 more from his stamina, 4 more from his stamina. So I could give +10 to my 2 guys. So if they fully tapped out here, they would have died. So maybe it was right to hold back after all, I guess. But yeah. I feel like, because they don't have a Quarian Ranger is the thing. Often with a board like this, you're like, oh, they have a Quarian, they can untap, have a blocker. But they could have gone for 7 damage. I guess then they'd have to have chumped with a Timberwatch Elf.
Yeah, I think I saw a Winding Way in hand too. So maybe at this point they're like, "Hey, this is our game to lose. We're gonna be able to keep going." Especially with the Timberwatch out there. You're potentially a lot of times in elves, you're not getting in for the incidental damage. You're just wiping them out in one turn. And the way their board is set up is really towards that kind of combo-y of like, "Hey, let's just produce 1,000,000 mana with Priest of Titania." At this point, a top deck of Aquarian Ranger really forces unfavorable blocks on your end. So I could see the justification in that for sure, of just like, hey, let me hold this back, and if we're going to kill them, we're going to kill them in one go.
Yeah, no, I think I'm taking it back. I think they definitely should have. They made the right play. I was thinking, well, they have us dead in like 2 turns here. Now they didn't necessarily know we had 2 staminas in hand, but like, I forgot how much damage Black Sack could deal. If they had attacked, I could have dealt them like 25 damage. So it was definitely the right call. And then because they had not just the Hydra, but also the Timberwatch Elf, I couldn't attack in because like I could make one of my guys enormous, but the other one would have gotten eaten by like a 12/12 guy, right?
Okay. So opponent decides to attack in this time.
Yeah. They've left their other guys up as chump blockers so they can feel a little more comfortable with this. And my concern is that, well, I could die to this in 2 hits with the Timberwatch, making it like 12 damage. But I also can't really afford to block because I can't lose my Beetle and I can't make it big enough to block. And my Shambler I'm going to sacrifice anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So I take the 12 damage, and I'm just hoping that I can double stamina here for an army of squirrels, and hopefully that'll help get us out of this position.
So okay. So the opponent didn't play Winding Way pre-combat, so I imagine they're planning on playing one of those Avenging Hunters in hand. Which is fine. They're kind of getting their mana going. I don't know if it's the right play there, just in the sense that it would be nice to get that Winding Way going so that you could potentially hit a Aquarian Ranger, but if you miss there, then it does slow you down a bit. But
yeah, I mean, they could have gone for the Winding Way with their 2 lands, and even if they don't get much, they could still Hunter with the Priest. So I think it probably was better to do it pre-combat, because if they hit like 2 Quarian Rangers, we'd probably just lose the game, because they could double untap the Timberwatch Elf for +7. Yeah.
Yep. And did they have a second Hunter in there as well? I don't recall.
In hand, I'm not sure if I saw that.
Because that's the other way that elves can kind of steal matchups sometimes, is just forcing their way down the Undercity is I think the name of that dungeon, and just dealing that extra 5 damage out of nowhere. You can kind of steal some wins that way. So that's a possibility as well. That's what the opponent's looking at doing.
Yeah, the initiative is obviously, and the Undercities is very powerful. Everyone knows that, but it's very generally rigid in that like you go one room per turn, and so it's like, okay, you've entered the initiative, the dungeon. I know that I have 2 turns until I get trapped here. And obviously, if you have an extra hunter, especially if it's like you attack, take the initiative from your opponent, and then play a hunter, it can be very surprising to be like, oh, suddenly they jumped ahead into the trap a turn earlier than I was expecting.
Yep. Nobody sees the extra hunters coming. I've played like 3 hunters in a row once and just killed my opponent outright.
Yeah, no one sees me tapping for 15 mana and playing 3 of the same card coming. What idiot opponents are you playing against that don't see that coming?
In their defense, they were probably losing anyway, but
yeah, often.
But yeah, so no, here your opponent plays out the Avenging Hunter, then plays the Winding Way. So again, I think it was probably a misplay to not play the Winding Way out before, but I don't think they picked up anything. Well, would that extra Hydra have been able to get them there?
They could have played it for 5 extra, so I don't think it would have been lethal. I still think there wasn't much that they would have been losing by doing a pre-combat, but I don't think it ended up mattering.
7. Yeah, so they could have put 5 more on there. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. And we go for the double stamina on the Shambler at the end step. Of course, we cast one of them, sacrifice it to bring it back, then you cast the other one. You could cast both on the creature at the exact same time to give 5 squirrels, but then you're going to get both triggers and it's only going to be able to return once. So you're losing out on value that way. The only reason I would ever do that is if I know they have like a Fairy Macabre, they're going to take it away anyway from the graveyard.
Okay.
Then maybe I would go for the extra 2 squirrels initially, but just an important thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. And now you're sitting there with that salmon hand, and it felt like you were very behind, but at this point, you're swinging in, and it's kind of your opponent. I think your opponent could probably still survive here, but a missed block could end the game for them as well.
Yeah, I mean, as long as they block the Carrion Feeder, we probably don't have lethal. We have 7 1/1s, we have a stamina in hand, so it can deal 9. And we do go for the stamina to make a couple extra squirrels. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of Nested Shambler, as good as it is, all the squirrels enter tapped, so we're not actually going to make blockers. So I go for this attack, and I leave the beetle back because I know that it needs to be our blocker, right? It can get a million counters and block. Of course, Carrion Feeder can't block, but I mean, I was pretty dead either way here. Of course, I was trying to take the initiative, do a lot, but like I could have left back all my squirrels if I wanted to have better blockers, because of course they have 2 tramplers right now. They have the Avenging Hunter and the Hydra up Llanowar Elves, and then they have the Timberwatch, which you can go on either that doesn't get blocked by the beetle. So
yeah, and they just picked up a Hydra. They revealed it off the Winding Way as well. So
yeah, my only hope here is that they misplay, because I don't have any removal, and I don't have enough blockers for their tramplers. So I have to hope they don't go for the Hydra, and then they don't Timberwatch the correct creature, basically.
yeah. Was there any consideration in also going in with the beetle for that reason then?
Yeah, I mean, I thought that if I attacked with the beetle, I figured they, of course, would jump it. They didn't seem like they were going to be someone who was going to
that's fair.
miss that. And I thought that it was more likely they would misplay by me having the beetle available, because my thought is the only way they misplay is if they try to pump the creature the beetle blocks, right? So if I block the Avenging Hunter and then make my beetle like a 6/6 so that the hunter will die, sometimes people get tunnel vision and they're trying to protect their creatures, and they're like, oh, well, I want to keep this one alive. And then they'll pump that, and it's like, oh, I'll just sack 7 more creatures to make my beetle big enough, and then I don't die from the Hydra. That's pretty much my only way to win here. So I think attacking with the beetle would have just shown them even more that like I'm done on board, and they just block with 1 elf, and I'm not going to win.
Yeah. And it's worth noting, and this is kind of a position that your deck was in this last turn, where if you were running the previous version of the deck, a Rite of Consumption, would have been lethal off the top.
Yeah,
But because you're running fling instead of rite of consumption, you both needed a red source and you would need to draw a fling. So it's kind of one of the limitations where you are definitely getting advantages running these rainbow cards in sideboard, but it also would have been a real situation where where you've lost an out on that last turn.
yeah, 100%. That's definitely something important to keep in mind is that like I was trying out this different tech. How
Mm-hmm.
does this different tech help me in those matchups, affinity and stuff like that? But also how does it hinder me in matchups where I don't even want those? Like I don't have any of my rainbow cards in my deck here and I have the snuff outs, but yes, I've lost the Rite of Consumptions. I've lost some of the other cards that would make this matchup much better for me. And so yeah, it would I have drawn a Rite of Consumption here? Who knows? But if I did, it would be lethal and would win me the game. And I don't have that out. So you're 100% right.
Okay, and then here's your opponent attacking in, and I believe you are dead here.
Yeah, they put the Hydra on another creature to just have 3 lethal attackers, and I'd scoop it up.
Yep. Okay. Well, interesting game. Both players took a one lander, but elves got there in the end. But you made a game of it, right? It took you until I think it was turn 3 or 4 until you drew your second land. And once you drew that second land, you were almost able to turn the corner, relying on Nested Shambler plus the Stanima, the unnatural Stanima synergy.
Yeah, so I definitely I did my best with the hand that I kept, but I also, as we talked about, probably shouldn't have kept it. Turns out that the one lander mirror when your opponent's creatures tap for mana is a lot better. If my one drops tap for mana, I think I would have been okay there. So yeah, should have mulliganed that one. I think if I got a mediocre 6, I probably could have done that a lot better if it had like a removal spell and 2 lands.
Right. Yep. And again, the issue wasn't that you had a one lander. The issue was that you didn't have any of your removal spells.
Yeah.
So that same hand with the one lander, if you even had one removal spell in there, that game probably would have looked very different.
I mean, if I had a snuff out, the moment they missed their land drop, I'd be taking out that elf because
Yeah.
the first elf that I see. Because well, if you don't have a second land, then you're on one land and maybe you play another elf, but like that's just like slows down the snowball of elves considerably.
So here we have game 3. And working off of those last games, I think the name of the game is probably removal at this point, right?
Yeah, I mean, we're gonna try not to make the same mistake and keep a one lander probably at all if we can avoid it, but certainly not one without a snuff out or something like that. I think we talked before about snuff out being so important for the deck because even on a deck that keeps one landers and has so many like one drops and maybe you're only playing one of those a turn, the snuff out still lets you double spell for a single mana. You can kill a thing and progress your board state, which is so important. Like I've gone a little bit back and forth between Tragic Slip and Snuff Out being the main removal spells in the deck. The main reason being Tragic Slip, not losing 4 life against Mono Red Madness could just be really helpful. But I think the ability to double spell on a one lander is just incredible. It's so good that I think Snuff Out's got to be the one that you're going for if you're not worried about budgetary concerns, of course.
Yeah, and worth noting now that you are on the play again, your opponent's removal gets a lot worse, right? Like you could play out a feeder turn 1 and not be concerned about it getting removed before it can get any value.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a little bit of concern just because the Monstrous Emergence could show a creature from hand, and so they could show a 5 power creature. But I do still lead on a Carrion Feeder here, just hoping that that's not what they have.
Yeah, and here you have a Shambling Ghast in hand. Is that it?
I think so. Yeah, Shambling Ghast, Nazumi Linkbreaker, Mortician Beetle, Unearth, a Vampire, and something else. It is another one lander. But I decide just to kill their elves right away here. And again, like we were just talking about, I often don't try to kill the first elf that I see because, Shambling Ghast can kill a Priest of Titania, which is obviously so much more value. But I do keep a one-lander. Again, I kept so many one-landers in this event. And I think I just need to slow them down a little bit here. So I go for the kill spell.
Yep. So, but if your opponent goes here, second land, Monstrous Emergence, you're not feeling in a good place at that point.
No, I mean, carried feeder's my entire game plan. I think I lose if that happens, frankly, and I'm just hoping it does not.
And it does not.
Doesn't happen this turn, and I draw the unearth, and I'm like, all right, well, this play worked before. Let's just grow it a little bit more, kill the elf. Of course, they're, if they get a land drop, they're up to 3 lands. Now they can start playing Timberwatch Elves. I can't kill that with Shambling Guest anyway. And if they couldn't kill the carrion feeder last turn, hopefully they can kill it this turn.
Yeah. Worth noting, the opponent did have 2 mana last turn, decided not to play a 2-drop elf, which signifies to you that they don't have a 2-drop elf. Because they would almost assuredly play Priest of Titania at that point over a Lawnmower Elf, because it would just be more mana efficient. Now, getting this extra land here, maybe you could make the argument that a Lawnmower Elf plus a land search out might be better, but I don't believe that that's the case. I think.
Yeah, I mean, if they wanted to play around the Shamblagast, that would have been a way to do it. But I think the chance of Priest being not killed is just too high that you would probably always play it on turn 2.
Yeah. All right. So, opponent has a very mid-range feeling hand.
Yeah.
Based on what I see over there, where they have some of their mid-rangey, like bigger creatures, but they do not have the early mana production that they would be hoping for.
Yeah, I mean, I was able to kill 2 of the early mana production, and that was kind of my goal, was if they get stuck with a bunch of giant creatures in hand, which they winding way into the exact cards I want to see, Spinewood's Paladin and 2 Spinewood's Paladin and a Timberwatch Elf. I was killing off the early guys and hoping that, like, I think with elves, you almost always need to either, whether you're a control deck or an aggro deck, you need to either kill the top end or the low end. If you can, if you have the removal to kill the priests, do that. But if you don't, at least you want to be able to answer all the giant creatures. And you can't often kill both unless you're like Kirkland Shamaning. And so I've killed the early guys, and I'm hoping that they just get stranded with a bunch of giant creatures in hand, which is kind of what's happening.
And that's exactly what the opponent want to see. So they had the decision point where they could have played their Timberwatch Elf. I believe they had a Timberwatch in hand, or play out that Winding Way. And so they were clearly hoping Winding Way into a Mana Dork. That's my best way to turn around, start playing my big things. Not hitting any Mana Dork there was pretty brutal.
Yeah. And I do a pretty interesting play here. I was trying to think, how do I lose here? Not that I've won the game, but like, how do I definitely lose the game? And that's if Carrion Feeder dies. And we know Monstrous Emergence is a potential. They just Winding Wade into 2 Spineless Paladins. So my thought was, what if they already had a Monstrous Emergence, but they didn't have a creature big enough to kill our feeder, and they just got a 5-power creature? Well, if that's the case, I need to make sure Carrion Feeder can be a 6-power creature, or rather 6 toughness creature. And so I unearth my Shambling Ghast just to get 1+1/+1 counter on my feeder, and then I cash that treasure in that I got for an Azumi Linkbreaker, so that if they have an emergence, now my feeder could be a 6/6, and it won't die to either the Paladin or a Generosent, which unless they're playing something wacky, I believe is the highest power that they're going to have in their deck.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, because that is kind of your opponent's out, right? Yeah. Is that they are able to remove your sack guy and your carrion feeder, and turn around the game from that point where it slows you down enough that they can kind of catch up. Because right now, taking 5 a turn, it puts them on a 2-turn clock, and even throwing out chump blockers doesn't feel great because they need those chump blockers to produce mana. Now they are getting really close to being able to naturally cast these larger spells.
Yep.
And a Timberwatch here is not a bad card.
Yeah, and that's exactly what they play. So my goal is to, if I can, force them to chump with that Timberwatch, because it's going to be pretty scary if it survives. So we have a 5/5 feeder, but we have a mercenary which can pump it by 1 power plus be sacrificed, so that can be 7 power. So if I can find a way to give +3 power to the feeder, I can force the Timberwatch chump. Or if I'm even luckier, maybe I can force, they don't realize that I can kill them and I can actually get lethal.
Yeah. 1 land here, you definitely almost certainly have the win. 1 more land here, because with that Sanoma Shambling Ghast there.
Yeah, so we don't hit a second land, and so I do actually an interesting play here. I realize I don't have the 10 power. I'm 1 short, and so I actually attack with a mercenary because it's the same amount of damage, but I want to bait them into potentially making a misplay here. And so they go for the block on the mercenary, and I stamina my mercenary just to trade with their guy.
Yeah, which is fine. It does put you vulnerable to monstrous emergence again, though.
It does. That's honestly, I think at this point I had gotten past that. Now, I'm not saying I
Mhm.
should have, because if they monstrous emergence here again, I probably lose the game. But they hadn't really been playing like they had it at this point, and I think I just really wanted to kill the Timberwatch Elf because I just was scared of it. Like, if they draw, I know that they don't have a ton of fodder creatures here, but they've also been playing some more expensive cards. They could have drawn, 2 elves or something in this time. And if they play a couple of them and suddenly can give +3/+3 to a creature, like, it could be really tough to get in. So I don't know if this was the best play for sure, but I just thought that it could be a way to get them a little bit.
Yeah.
And we do see that they got a couple of creatures that are cheaper. So Llanowar Elves and a Priest coming out.
Yeah. And Priest is kind of the way for them to turn that corner where it's like, hey, I can chump block with this one elf and then potentially start dropping bigger creatures and turn the corner. And at this point, you're probably like, I really would love to draw a swamp anytime now.
Yeah, I mean, when you keep a one lander, you got to expect that you might not have another one for a while. But I still have an Abyss, a creature that makes them sack a creature every turn. So we kill the Llanowar Elves. We get a Beetle out, which obviously I would have preferred to have the Beetle out 4 turns ago, but
Mm-hmm.
because we just have had it in hand, just haven't had the mana to cast it. So here they get to keep their Priest of Titania and start casting some bigger spells.
Yep. Now they can play a 5-drop off the Priest plus the 3 lands. Playing out that Llanowar Elf also puts another chump blocker out, which is a great place to be in. And at this point, the opponent is gaining another 3 life, and this is probably where they're hoping I might be able to turn the corner here.
Yeah, the Paladin is a big guy that can rival our feeder, so I have to make sure I have enough creatures to kill it in combat, and then also gains them some life, which makes it so that my feeder isn't quite lethal if I don't have the right fodder creatures. Which with the link breaker here, I can make it an 8/8 if I sack the beetle, but it also means I can't attack with the beetle because it's not going to be big enough in time.
Yeah. And I think easy chump with your Llanowar Elves here from the Elves player.
Yeah, probably. They could go for like a double block with the Spinewoods Paladin and the Elf, but like I'm just losing a couple fodder creatures. It's probably not worth it.
Yeah.
So they do chump indeed. My concern here is if another Paladin comes out, which I know they have, then attacking into 2/5/4 is going to be really tough.
Okay, and there's some life gain that probably won't be super significant this game, but it could be. I mean, it could be the difference between one turn and another turn.
I was going to say, it makes it so the feeder's not lethal at this exact moment, so it absolutely could be relevant.
Yep. Now, that is hard for your opponent because their mana is extremely tied up, so it's almost just better. The fact that it's just a land drop is nice for the opponent as well.
Yeah.
All right, so we got a 6-drop here. We're playing a Hydra.
Yeah.
Interesting. Is it going to be standalone or okay? Putting it on the creature.
They go for the bestow. There are merits to both of these plays, and I think having a second creature would have done pretty well for them because, like, the concern here is that I could theoretically get the beetle to be an 8-power creature and just kill them in one hit, which is exactly what I'm trying to do. Trying to set up by sacking the link breaker but keeping the mercenary.
Yeah.
And I do even draw the second swamp here. But I think their goal was that they really wanted to be able to block the carrion feeder and not lose any of their creatures. So their guy became a 9/8. And so if I have to attack in with both of my guys and am not lethal, they can theoretically eat my carrion feeder. Maybe I get in with the beetle for 6 damage, but then with their food, they recover a little bit. And then maybe I just can't get in at all. So I don't hate the play, but it's definitely a little risky.
Yeah. Something I really like that you're doing right here is you drew that land. There's a temptation to just like throw down the land. But that's information that you don't need to give your opponent yet until you decide what you're doing. Because there is a potential that your opponent thinks, okay, they didn't draw their land and they block a little bit more unfavorably. And then you can turn around and kind of turn the corner there. So I appreciate you thinking it all out before you reveal what you drew that turn. Because it really changes the math, but also changes what your opponent is seeing from you.
Yeah, I mean, with Black Stack, you almost always want to play a lot of your guys pre-combat because they can be combat tricks. But theoretically, there could be a moment where I don't actually need to play anything until post-combat, and then they could so I could keep the land until after attacks, and then I could make attacks that they block in a certain way because I don't have a second land, and then I have that land and I have a blocker or something. So like, yeah, it's definitely information I don't need to give them early. And while I'm thinking out my play, they're thinking something different than what I'm thinking, than what's actually happening. And so like, I'm also just taking away time for them to adjust to the fact that I have 2 lands now, you know?
Yeah. And you also, by playing that land ahead of time, you're also giving misleading information, right? Now you're showing, hey, I could have a stamina in hand. You don't. I mean, you don't have anything to play with that land. You could have kept it in your hand until post combat, but you're choosing to give them the information to set the narrative that you want them to think.
Exactly. And it's really funny because I actually ripped my second land with a bunch of 2-drops in hand, and I still ended up playing the 1-drop that I have because pumping the Shambler with the Mercenary makes it so that my feeder can be big enough to eat their guy. It can be a 10-10. It can be big enough to not die to their creature. And I hit them with the Beetle. So they take 6 damage here. I don't lose my feeder. I eat the Spinewoods Paladin while, of course, the Hydra survives.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't have done any of that with the Accursed Marauder would have made them sacrifice the priests, and wouldn't have grown my feeder. The vampires in hand tier wouldn't have done anything. So it's a little goofy that I finally drew my second land and still cast a 1-drop. But you're right. I was also able to bluff like a stamina.
Yeah. Now the game's not over here. Elves could definitely turn around from this position, but it's getting tougher. Really, they're going to need to play out some elves, probably a Quirion Ranger, but yep, again, opponent didn't have it there. End up playing.
Yeah, they had a lead the Stampede. They even could have cast. Maybe it was a slightly premature scoop because they could have maybe found something, but they were in a pretty tough spot. They were on 2 lethal attackers that were going to eat 2 creatures every single turn. And I mean, obviously, I also had Marauder and Vampire and stuff in hand, but
yeah, absolutely. Well played. Could have gone either way, and didn't see any of the snuff outs that game. That would have made it probably even a little easier for you. But you were still able to turn the corner or keep going and prevent the opponent from turning the corner, I should say.
I didn't see any snuff outs, which I would have loved, but I did see the Shambling, which was super instrumental. So in Shambling, I don't consider removal in all matchups because it sometimes doesn't do enough. It's 100% removal in elves because killing a 1/1 is so vital that I was able to make it again on a 1-lander, but obviously being able to slow them down really made the difference there.
Yeah. And while you talk, I will ask you the same question you asked before. Do you think that was the right opening hand to keep?
I think this one was, not just because I won the game, obviously, but because of the Shambling. Like, if I didn't have the Shambling, no. There was no world where that would have been a good enough keep. And based on the last one I kept, maybe I would have kept it, and that would have been bad. But Shambling, on the play especially, Shambling is so good, because we get our feeder out immediately, they play their 1-drop, and I'm able to kill it exactly as we did. Mm-hmm. So I think it was the right play. Now, could I have lost if they got their Monstrous Emergence? 100%. But I Black Sack, you do need to keep some hands that like will just lose to a single kill spell. Because if they don't have the kill spell, you just win the game. And if you mulligan that hand every time, I think you lose too many resources. This is not a deck that mulligans very well, I will say.
Yeah.
So you got to keep as many as you can.
I think you got very unlucky that game. You basically won that game just on your opener. If you would have drawn that second land in the first 3, 4, 5 turns, you would have been in a much better place.
That too. These hands look like I'm keeping 1-landers, knowing that I'm never going to draw another card. On average, with 17 lands, you should draw a second land, I believe, in the first 2, maybe it's 3 turns. But if you're getting to turn 5 or 6 without drawing a second land, you are in the minority. You're unlucky there. So I do keep these hands thinking I will hopefully draw a land in 2 turns. And if that doesn't happen, hopefully you can make it work. But I'm not just throwing caution to the wind. The stats show that I should be getting more lands than I really am.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. And play to your wins.
Yep.
All right. Well, great.
So I was able to take that one down, and we are moving on to the finals. So we're in the finals. We are against Mono Black Zombies. This is actually a player from my store in Cincinnati who drove separately from me, but with some other friends, and came up to the store. So I actually had played him this exact match when I was testing my Rainbow Black Sack against Zombies the week before this, and I pretty soundly crushed him. But the finals was a lot more interesting.
Yeah. So I'm looking at the deck list here, and it looks like we have a lot of shared cards between the 2 deck lists. like, for example, Cursed Marauders, Carrion Feeders, and is that where it ends? Shambling Ghast.
Yeah, pretty much every card that we're playing that's a zombie is going to show up in his list. So it's not too much overlap, but it's like maybe those three that you mentioned is probably mostly play sets. I don't know if he had village rights or anything like that.
Yep, 4 village rights I see as well.
So we probably have like 20-ish cards that are the same. So it's not quite as similar as like a Gruul Ponza and a Gruul Monsters, where it's like only 10 cards different, but still like kind of a mirror match in some ways here.
Yep, absolutely. So it looks like both of you are here and both are keeping. And do you run 16 lands in your list? Is that accurate?
I run 17 lands.
17. Okay. So it looks like your opponent's running 16, so just one less. All right. So here we see the we're going to have to kind of call out some of these cards a little bit more. Serrated Scorpion, which is one that we don't see very often, which is 1/2 that when it dies, it deals 2 damage to each opponent and you gain 2 life.
Yeah, not a zombie, but clearly something that he's found is the fodder of his choice. Like, he does run the Carrion Feeders, but he's not as all in on like the creatures that die into other creatures. He wants just a little bit more of utility and things like that, and also kind of like the burn, because his 2 of his main win cons for zombies are Gem Palm Polluter and Shepherd of Rot, both of which deal damage equal to the number of zombies on the field to their opponent. Shepherd of Rot actually hits both players. So I think the Scorpions is a way to get a little bit more reach with that. If you can ping them for 4 with a couple Scorpions and then Shepherd of Rot and stuff, they might not even need to attack a single time if he can just ping me down.
Yeah. Now, Shepherd of Rot's a wild card. Like you said, it has each player lose life equal to the number of zombies in play. And so it's one of the few cards in Magic in general, but especially Pauper, that allows you to force a draw in moments where you're clearing out both your opponents and your life total sometimes at the same time. So I can see why the Serrated Scorpion would be important to try to get your opponent's life total below yours so that you can start utilizing things like Shepherd of the Rot.
Yeah, it kind of operates in some ways like a Pestilence as far as win cons, where like you want your food to keep your life total above theirs, then you Pestilence them down. Obviously not as far as wiping the board. But yeah, the Shepherd of Rot, if you're dealing 6 damage to each player and you're both below 6 or at 6, you can absolutely draw, in which case you basically treat that game as though it didn't exist. So you could end up with 4 or even 5 games in a match, and it's still just first to 2 wins in that case.
All right, so we see your opponent here go ahead and try targeting your Bloodthorn Vampire to try to give it a -1/-1 counter, which I appreciate. Now, also an attack in here and clearing out their whole board of these Scorpions, which is an interesting strategy. Very aggressive, but maybe in this matchup, that's the way to go.
Yeah, I mean, hit for 4 with the Carrion Feeder and hit for 4 off of both Scorpions. So, like you said, very aggressive here. I do have some follow-up, although it would have been better to have these beforehand, because Mortician Beetle counts anytime either of us sacrifices a creature that it gets a counter. So, obviously, it would have been nice to have that a moment ago. But still, I have a pretty good board here with a Vampire, a couple pieces of fodder, and anything further that he wants to sacrifice is going to grow the Beetles. But also he's at double my life total, so like things are looking a little interesting for sure.
Yeah, and Crawl from the Cellar, it's an interesting one. Returning a creature from your graveyard for 1 mana, returning a creature from graveyard, and if it's a zombie, also you get to put a +1/+1 counter on target zombie. Sorry, you also can put a +1/+1 counter on target zombie you control. So it's a little bit of extra value. It's funny, when I first saw this card, I was like, why is it being run over Unearth? It does have flashback, which it gives a little bit more value. But for cards like Gem Palm, you really want those cards in your hand. Gem Palm allows you to cycle it from your hand, and your opponent loses life equal to the number of zombies you control. So it allows you to return it to your hand and utilize Gem Palm again, which you really don't want to return Gem Palm as much to the battlefield, and you really can't, because its mana value is way too expensive.
Yeah, exactly. Like the ideal situation is to just like do a little bit of chip damage early, flood the board with zombies, and then start cycling Gem Palm for like 5 or 6 damage at a time. And then if you can Crawl from the Cellar, if you have 5 mana, you can Gem Palm, Crawl from the Cellar, Gem Palm again, and that can just deal 10 damage out of nowhere, which could be really, really strong. Not to mention the extra incidental counters from the Crawl from the Cellar are not irrelevant either.
Yeah, and I see a Shepherd of the Rot in the graveyard. How did that one get there? Was it? remove.
Yeah, he played the Shepherd of Rot, and I immediately sacrificed my Shambling Gas to pick it off. We both have zombies on the field, although right now I have mostly beetles and vampires. But we both have some zombies, so I knew that the Shepherd, especially with my life total so much lower, was definitely going to be something I needed to kill here. And by killing it, by sacrificing my creature, my beetles grew. He, I believe, had the choice to sacrifice it and chose not to because it would grow my beetles, or maybe he did. Either way, our beetles are 3/3 and 4/4s right now. So like we have quite an army here, but he does have one giant carrion feeder. So I'm actually chumping with a vampire here. I can't really afford to try to trade for it, and I can't allow it to hit me because then a jump palm would be lethal pretty quickly, or like the scorpion that he just got in hand.
Yeah. Now, one of the things zombies really needs in order to deal a bunch of damage is to have a board. And your opponent here not having really much of a board other than 1/7/7 doesn't have the critical mass of zombies to really out of the blue take you out with a gem palm polluter or a couple lined up. Again, gem palm polluter, one of the benefits of it too is when you cycle it, you're getting that draw card as well. So it basically replaces itself at the same time while dealing that damage, which makes it a really powerful card.
Yep, for sure. They, yeah, you're right. Their board is a little lacking, but here we see him filling it back up with Shambling Ghast, Scorpion, and another Shepherd of Rot. And of course, the Carrion Feeder is still lethal, so I'm now having to chump it with a Beetle. I could have left back the Vampire, but obviously I want to have the ability to sacrifice things, so I opted to lose a Beetle here. But things are a little more even than they would appear, because like it looks like, oh, we have 2 giant Beetles, but they have a bunch of chump blockers, a creature that's killing one of ours every single turn. I can't really get through with my beetles, and there's a Shepherd of Rot that if I don't kill, that can start draining me for 3, at least so far. I draw Village Rites and don't really have anything I want to sacrifice to it either, so it puts me in a bit of a tough spot here.
Yeah, and even in an attack here, like a chump block with a Serrated Scorpion is just a loss of 2 life on your end and preventing the damage on their end. Now, and especially since Serrated Scorpion doesn't count towards the zombie count, so it's kind of an easy block there.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, I got to get through them at some point, so I think I make a pretty conservative attack with just 1 beetle here because he's got the Shambling Ghast, so if I attack with 2 beetles, he could try to pick off the vampire with the Shambling Ghast, in which case I have to sack a beetle to keep the vampire alive, and then I still have to chump the Carrion Feeder with the vampire, and I'd be losing 2 creatures there, which I don't really want to do. So I leave the beetle back here so that I can just chump with that if I want to, and potentially Village Rites it here.
Yep. And your opponent with a Shepherd of the Rot on the battlefield really puts a clock on you, right? Like you're the one that has to do something. If you're both just sitting there, your opponent's going to win, especially with them being at a higher life total than you.
Yeah, 100%. And I actually, this makes more sense. I go for a chump with the Bloodthorn Vampire because it is under pressure of getting killed from that Shambling Ghast at any moment. So I preserve both my beetles, which are together lethal. So I also force at least 1 chump block here.
And double chump. Okay.
And he goes for the double block, I believe, or double chump. And then activating the Shepherd of Rot. So we're both going to lose 3.
Okay.
And has the decision if he wants to sack him to grow the Carrion Feeder. But of course it grows our beetles as well, and decides to just go for it on both of them.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if that's the play I would have made to get rid of the Shepherd of the Rot there. Because again, it was kind of the one holding the most pressure on you, and with the couple. But again, over here we see your opponent draws another land. Wouldn't have made a difference. Yeah, I believe they had another land in hand too, so it was just kind of a dead at that point. But yeah, I don't know. If keeping Shepherd of the Rot there might have put the pressure on enough on you that if they would have drawn like another zombie or 2, or a card that allowed them to get a couple of zombies, could have turned the corner, or a gem palm even.
Well, they maybe could have forced the draw at that point, but if they weren't blocking with the Shepherd, they would have been taking a hit from the beetle, and it wouldn't have quite been lethal. It would have put them to 1 with that Shepherd activation, and we would have been at 5. So if they could find, but they would have lost the Shambling Ghast, so they would have needed about 3 more zombies, or for us to contribute some zombies to force the draw. So I think the Shepherd with the double beetle was just like not quite doing enough there. So I think the chump was fine, but they definitely needed to draw something more at the end there, and did not find it.
No, makes sense. The other thing I noticed that your opponent is not running is any sort of sort of like fling effect, which makes sense. I mean, their main game plan isn't to make a giant carrion feeder like they did there, but might be a valuable thing that they've considered in the past. But that would have been something that would have also gotten them out there.
Yeah, I think with just 4 carrion feeders, it might not be worth it, because otherwise the biggest creature they could present is probably like hard casting a jump home for like 4 power. And they're really trying to just use the carrion feeder to be a little bit of chip damage, give them the ability to manipulate when they want to sacrifice their serrated scorpions, shambling ghasts, and obviously it's a zombie that can come back if they wanted to.
I will note they are also running 2 Gurmag Anglers, so that would be another large creature.
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about that one. Yeah, Gurmag's pretty good too. So yeah, I mean, I could see a rite of consumption in here, but it's definitely a little more awkward when you only have a few creatures that are very big, whereas most of your creatures are pretty small. And with Black Sack, obviously, you're running about 12 creatures that can get pretty enormous.
Yeah, definitely not as good as it feels in Black Sack, I would imagine. Okay, so what did you bring in for sideboard here?
I can't say this was a matchup that I specifically teched against because I wasn't expecting zombies, but we do have those Masks of Law and Grace, which give protection from black and red. And in addition to being able to protect from their removal of any kind that they have, except for like edicts, of course, it just makes it fully unblockable, the creature that we target. So we brought those in to have unblockable / infinite chump blockers as well, because we can block their carrion feeder with a guy that has protection. So I think we just brought those in, and I'm not exactly sure what we took out. I think we kept in at least one of the flings and the Teamer Battle Rages. I don't know if we added any more to those.
Yeah, can't really bring in your snuff outs. Have you ever accidentally brought in snuff outs against a black creature deck?
Not. I don't think so. I mean, maybe early on when I was playing Pauper. I will say that my opponent Christian here, when we did play previously at our event, I think previously at our LGS, like the week before this, he brought in Spinning Darkness against me, forgetting that it was also a card that said non-black, and so he did not make that mistake in the finals here.
Yeah, no, that can be tricky because you don't read that part of the text very often on cards. You're usually focused on hey, it's a free kill spell.
Exactly. So we start with a 1-lander here, Shambling Ghast into a Village Rites. We don't find our land, so that's the classic Marsh Flats special. And I think I'm looking at. I think I was just going to pass to hold the treasure up here, but realized I would have to discard and don't really want to lose a card here, so I just go for the Nezumi Link Breaker here.
Yeah, that makes sense. And yeah, that's a tough position to be in because again, you do have kind of your answer card in your hand. That would be great to have out right now, but stuck on the 1-lander.
Yeah, I didn't think. I have the Mask of Law and Grace in hand and a fling, which is why it was really unfortunate to have to use this treasure. But like, discarding card didn't seem to do that much, and frankly, I'm pretty far from using the Mask of Law and Grace anyway. I have a beetle in hand, but I don't have any carrion feeders, I don't think, which means like the chances of growing it pretty large are. Oh, I do have a carrion feeder in there actually. I guess I could have gone all in and just like discarded a card here. Next turn, played carrion feeder, given it protection, and then started sacrificing from there. Felt like that might have been too slow if I'm only hitting one spell a turn, given the start that they have, which isn't incredibly fast, but they have a Putrid Goblin here, and they're already cycling at Jump Palm for a couple damage.
Yeah, and it's important to remember that a creature with protection from black and red isn't a full silver bullet, seen as your opponent is running 4 Curse Marauders in their main deck.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Like if I go all in on that and they Curse Marauder, I lose the game on the spot probably. So that's definitely something that I was keeping in mind and trying to play around. Yeah, so we go for another Village Rites on the Link Breaker, and we do find the swamp this time. So we're getting back into the game a little bit, trying to decide what I want to cast.
I see a Shambling Ghast as well, so potential to start producing treasure tokens.
Yep.
But great card against your opponent again. If they're going to be sacrificing their stuff, it's growing with them.
Yeah, I don't often play the beetle before the carrion feeder, but I'm not expecting them to have a ton of removal, although that bites me here. And I figure if they attack with their zombie, which they've been pretty known to just like kind of attack their decayed zombies pretty immediately. So I figured the decayed zombie sacrifices after combat, it'll grow my beetle. But he has the suffocating fumes, which wipes both my guys. Obviously, if I had played a carrion feeder there, I could have sacked the mercenary, kept it alive. So I maybe walked into that a little bit, but I also wasn't fully playing around the fumes.
Yeah. So in this matchup, do you feel like you are still the beatdown?
I think so. My creatures can get a lot bigger than theirs more quickly, unless if they have the carrion feeder start. But like as we see here, they don't, and they just have a couple of 2/2s. But they do have that late game like gem palm for 5 or 6 or 7, and then buy it back and do it again. So like, not that they're a control deck by any means. They are still like I would say aggro to mid range. But I think they're leaning a little bit more into like the value and like the late game burn spells and stuff like that.
Yeah, your opponent is playing wisely, I think, in that they are trying to, one, get as much damage in as early as possible, but then two, they really benefit from gumming up the board and just finishing you off with that burn. We kind of saw that last game, but here they're in a really good position to do that with you not really having much of a board to kind of fight it off.
Yeah, 100%. And we draw another beetle here, so I'm hoping to get that down and like start growing some counters. Of course, without them having a feeder on board, they're not sacrificing anywhere near as many creatures. Like they could do a village rites or something, but I realize it's probably better to just play it a little slower now. And I go for a greedy freebooter and a carrion feeder. Of course, they could have like another suffocating fume, so I certainly don't want to like just do a beetle and a fodder again, right?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of a tricky boat, but you do need to start making kind of you just need to start making progress if you're going to be able to turn the corner, and this is a great way to start.
Yeah, for sure. And he was extremely aggressive with the Rotten Reunions. I think almost maybe even a little bit to his detriment, where he wasn't even holding it up when I maybe had some cards that would be unearthed or gotten from the graveyard. Like I have a stamina in hand. And he's doing it during his main phase. Now he's getting back a jump pump leader with the crawl from the cellar. So the idea might be like just cycle it right away, get some more damage with the extra zombie. But all of this could happen, except for the crawl from the cellar, which he could cast now. All of the other stuff could happen at instant speed. Maybe he's playing around removal, or there's a number of reasons why doing it now would be the right call. But I think he was a little aggressive with it, and I believe there's at least one point in the game where I'm able to take advantage of that a little bit.
No, absolutely. Yeah, having main board Rotten Reunions really really helps out in a matchup like this, where it offers that incidental value, but you really can take away the value from your opponent running the Black Sack deck.
Yeah. And I'm always saying that I don't care that much about the Nile Spellbombs, the Fairy Macabres. I actually do care about a Rotten Reunion quite a bit, because while it uses a little more of their mana, it can hit our stamina or unearthed targets twice and gives them zombies for it. So it's not like a Macabre it's a full card trade for like one stamina trigger. It's like it really can give them a lot of value.
Yeah, and I can see these 2/2 decayed zombies being kind of a tricky thing to navigate, right? Where it's like, yes, you want to get in for the damage, but then you're losing the creature at the same time. And so I can see this being kind of a challenging kind of thing to navigate. Now, them not being able to block is also an element too. So they're really only attacking creatures or are on there as potential zombie fodder. And now we see the Mask of Long Grace.
Yeah, so I decided to cash it in here and try to just start having a clock that can kill them before they can kill us. Right now, that carrying feeder is only a 2/2, so I'm not doing a ton of work with it, but got to start somewhere. But yeah, as far as those Rotten Reunions you mentioned, in my stock list, I usually am running Rotten Reunion in the sideboard for Black Sack. Of course, I didn't have room here because of all the rainbow cards. But yeah, like you said, I almost always try to get more value out of the zombies than like just attacking for 2 damage, because like that can be okay, but you want to at least get a carrion feeder or a beetle trigger, to get a counter. If you're lucky, you can even sacrifice them to a village rites after you've dealt 2 damage. So you generally want to make the most out of those zombie tokens, because they can be a lot more powerful than just a couple of damage.
No, that makes a lot of sense. Yep. But their deck does have the benefit to get the value from that. Unlike most decks can, which is nice.
Yep. And they go for a crawl from the cellar here on the Gem Palm Polluter, and there's a lot of zombies on board. I have a Carrion Feeder and a Shambling Ghast, and they have a Shepherd of Rot, a Zombie Token, and a Putrid Goblin. So I make a play here that I think we talked about afterwards is probably not the right call. They cycle the Gem Palm Polluter, trying to hit me for 5, and I, in response, sacrifice the Shambling Ghast to pick off the Shepherd of Rot, which is a creature I already know is going to kill me next turn probably. And so I reduce the zombie count to 3 here. So I only take 3. However, I think there are couple
2. Oh no, your zombies count 2, don't they?
My zombies count 2. My Carrion Feeder, his Putrid Goblin, and the zombie. But he now is attacking me with a Putrid Goblin, which is a 4/4 because of the 2++1 counters from the crawls from the cellar. So I could have just kept the Shambling Ghast, taken 2 extra damage, and then had a chump blocker for this, and then I would have only taken 2 more damage from the Ghast, but then I wouldn't have had to chump with my Beetle here, which I feel absolutely that I have to, because otherwise I go to 2 and he's got a Scorpion on board, and then I just lose to that.
Your opponent putting a +1/+1 counter on the Scorpion there also might have been a valuable play for them, just to be able to attack in with both there. I guess then you're coming in. Well, I don't think I would be too scared of just like dying on the swing back from the Carrion Feeder at that point. I think the goal is just to get you as low a life total as possible. But we don't know what's in your opponent's hand.
Yeah, I think he didn't want to attack. Sorry, let me pause this here because some stuff's happening. The Beetle, if he had attacked with both, I could have taken it and gone to 1, and then my Beetle and my Feeder could have attacked in, and I potentially could have gotten him there because his zombie couldn't block. Was I think his thought, and I think although the zombie was here last turn, so maybe he could have attacked with all of them and then forced something to block, but I don't know. In any case, I think we also realized that I have a Fling in hand and a Supernatural Stamina and a Nested Shambler. So if I had gone for the chump block on the Putrid Goblin, made a treasure off of my Shambling Ghast, I would have needed to rip a swamp, which I did. But if I did that, then I can Nested Shambler, Supernatural Stamina to grow my Feeder to like a 10/10, attack with that, and then fling it with the treasure that I made. And that was not a line that I had seen. I think you mentioned after the fact that I could have gone for that. And I was a little bit too in the mindset of like, I need to not die here, as opposed to I need to win here, which is obviously not the right call. If you can win, you obviously want to do it.
Right. It's a tricky balance, right? It's like it's easy to fall into that mindset of, and it's challenging to consistently be looking for your line to a win. And reevaluating it over and over again, and it's pretty fatiguing, I think, and especially in a larger tournament.
Yeah, it can be pretty tough here, and so I just missed that line. It would have obviously won me the game, but now he has a Carrion Feeder, 2 Serrated Scorpions, so my life total is virtually at 2 right now, and I have just a Nested Shambler to block either his 4/4 or his 2/2, obviously the bigger guy. I have a Village Rites, but I'm pretty sure there's nothing I can draw here anyway, but you always got to play to your outs and see. So I go for the block, draw 2 cards, make a squirrel, just to see if I can find something that either gains me life or like kills the zombie before it hits me. And I do not.
Right. Tapped squirrels again. I don't think it mattered there, but if you would have been
if it was untapped, I could only have blocked with one of them anyway. But so I take the 2 from the zombie, and then he just sacks both Scorpions, and I die. So close game, one that I'm pretty positive if I had played correctly, because we didn't know I had a swamp on top. So obviously I didn't have perfect information to say this is the exact line I should take. But if I realized that it was a potential option to win the game, then I should have probably played as though there was a swamp on top and just hoped for the best. And it would have worked out in that situation. But
now I will admit my fault from this day too. I also played against the zombie deck on my elf deck. And when my opponent initially threw out like a zombie, I'm trying to even think what zombie was. Oh no, when they first played like a turn 1 Serrated Scorpion, I was a little judgmental of like, okay, maybe I just have a free win here. It was not. I got destroyed by zombies. Serrated Scorpion in that matchup even dealt at least 4 damage, maybe I think even more than that. I think there was a Serrated Scorpion to start. It does a lot of damage and also provides some life gain at the same time.
It does. It's actually a card that a lot of people have said is really good in Black Sack itself. I've tried it a little bit, maybe not as much as people would like, but the part that I can't really get behind is that people bring it in as a sideboard card for burn matchups where the life gain can be really relevant. And I just feel like a card that gains you 2 life and drains for 2, but like is not really a good enough sideboard card. I mean, if it was a full lightning helix, 3 and 3, like maybe that would be good enough. In fact, maybe it'd be highly played because that sounds really good. But I don't know. Like it seems like it's not impactful enough as a sideboard card, and so I don't really play it.
Or if it was able to hit a creature, that'd be beautiful.
Man, if this card was just removal, shock plus gain 2,
Yes.
that card would be incredible. I mean, Shambling Ghast is one of our best cards, I think, because it's -1, -1. If I could suddenly start hitting your Timberwatch Elves and your Gutter Snipes with it, oh my god, I'd play 4 Scorpions in a heartbeat.
Yeah. No, I'm still a fan of Perilous Myr. If Perilous Myr was a one drop, every day.
I'm also a fan of Perilous Myr if it were a 1-drop. Unfortunately, it's too pricey for what it is now. But if it just cost a black mana, I would be playing a playset of those.
Yeah. I mean, that being said, if Serrated Scorpion was a Baleful Strix, great card.
Oh, I don't think we have time to get into that. But
that controversy.
we are moving on to the last game in the finals, game 3 here. And I'm only at 5. My first hand was like 4 lands, Beetle, Fling. And then I had a 6 lander. So we're down to 5, but we do have Carrion Feeder, Beetle, 2 Swamps, and I think that's a Village, right? No, Nested Shambler. So I have a pretty good aggressive start for a 5-card hand.
Mm-hmm.
And he starts with a Changeling Outcast, which I was not expecting. It is a zombie, of course, because it's got Changeling, but it also cannot block or be blocked. So I'm not worried about it slowing me down at all. Maybe just getting in for a couple of chip damage, but I'm not even worried about that, and I'm going to play a Freebooter here, sack it immediately, scry, and I think I just go all in here. Yeah, sack the treasure, play a Nested Shambler, attack with the Carrion Feeder, and I could hold the Shambler. It would be better if I draw like a Stamina or something, but I just think I want to go fast. Like on a mulligan to 5, I'm not winning the card advantage game. So I'm not probably winning the long game. So I just need to go as fast as possible. So I have 2 4/4s on turn 2, and I'm hoping that's going to be good enough.
It does make you susceptible to a Marauder, which I think that is what your opponent is about to play. So there is that consideration, but I agree. Just like go fast. Don't let Outcast matter. Outcast this is probably one of its less good looking matchups, where you would really want it as just a matchup where that incidental damage just really pays off in the end.
Yeah, I mean,
this one it's more of a race.
Honestly, if that Outcast was just like a Scorpion, I might have even played differently just because it's a chump blocker, gain some life. But I was like, with no blocker here, I think I can be good here. But you're right. I didn't play around the Marauder, and that did bite me a little bit here. I had the very tough choice of sacrificing a Beetle or a Feeder. Of course, if I sack the Feeder, the Beetle would get a counter, and I could be even more aggressive. But then I would not have the ability to sacrifice anything else I draw. And I felt like I need to draw well here, and I need to be able to draw cards that I can sacrifice. So I kept the Carrion Feeder. Who knows if that's right, but that's what I decided to do. And I think I have a Village Rites now in hand, and I just drew an Unearth.
Which your opponent there running that Rotten Reunion out, it really hurts here, because that would have been perfect to hold in hand in response to this Unearth. Otherwise, you really have nothing going for you.
Exactly. They preemptively got rid of the Beetle, and that is unfortunate because I might have wanted to get the Beetle, but of course, if they held it up and I went for the Beetle or anything, they could have stopped it. So for that reason, knowing that the Rotten Reunion is in the graveyard, even though I know he's likely to use it proactively, I really want to use the Unearth right now because I don't want it to be susceptible to the Reunion flashback.
Yeah, exactly. And Shambler's not... you have a Shambler. Shambler's not the worst card to grab.
Yeah, I have a Shambler and a Freebooter, and I'm not sure which one I want. Obviously, Shambler gets more guys, which I think is what I go for, but the the Freebooter could scry and could give me the ability to make colored mana if I do find one of those splash cards.
No, that makes a lot of sense, especially with you having the Village Rites in hand and the draw coming your way. So there, I could see that being a temptation for sure, because a Mask of Long Grace is a way to kind of get out of this trouble.
I mean, with the fast start that we had, they're at 12, so a Mask of Long Grace could definitely do some work here. They do jump with the Putrid Goblin, then they find their own Carrion Feeder and another Rotten Reunion, which they use both halves of right away just to make a couple zombies. Again, I'm pretty happy with them using that, not to its full potential, I would say.
Yep. Now, though building up quite the board of zombies at this point, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, like a gem palm feels really rough when it's 2 mana, deal 6 damage and draw a card.
Well, and it's even more than that because we have a Shambler and a Carrion Feeder, so
yeah.
it would be a deal 8. Although we immediately chump block because I want to get this Village Rites off anyway. The thing about their board, they have 6 creatures as we were talking about, now 5. Only one of them can block. Carrion Feeder, Changeling Outcast, and all of the Decayed Zombies cannot block. So they do have a scary board, but it's not as defensive as they might like.
Yeah. And there we see you pick up a red card. Maybe the treasure token would have felt a little better there. But again, you can't predict that you're going to draw your sideboard card there at the same time.
Yep. Yeah, it could be good here. They go for a chump block with the Putrid Goblin. And I wouldn't have had a squirrel, but I could have had this beetle. So I couldn't have quite had lethal, I don't think, if I had gone for the other one. But yeah, but I could maybe build it up for next turn. And here we see another Accursed Marauder. I have a Village Rites in hand, but of course that doesn't change what the Marauder can hit. It's going to take away. Now I have, again, the same choice as before, Beetle or Feeder. Of course, the Feeder's a lot bigger here, but I decide to sack the Feeder because they have a Carrion Feeder and 2 Decayed Zombies on board. Their whole game plan right now looks like sacrificing creatures. And so in addition to that, them sacking their own Marauder means that I already have a Beetle that's a 3/3. So like it makes it so they can't block, or excuse me, they can't attack now with their zombies. I think they realize after like, oh, I made a mistake. Now my zombies just get eaten by the Beetle.
Yeah. Yeah. Also an interesting choice in sacking the Accursed Marauder over one of the zombie tokens.
Well, they can't sack the tokens, right? Because it's non-token.
Yeah, non-token.
But I do think they probably should have cashed in the Changeling Outcast at this point. Because the unblock ability is not really doing them much good. And having a 2-power blocker is probably a lot better. So I think that was a bit of a mistake.
Yeah. So much hidden text on these cards.
Certainly is,
yeah. Yeah. So then we see here, you recovered the board pretty well at this point.
Yeah, I mean they have a they have a Carrion Feeder with 1 counter, so they could make it big enough. Well, first I'm thinking they have a Carrion Feeder that can grow alongside sacrificing creatures, but then I remember how Beetle works, and I think they had forgotten. This is pretty much the crux of the game. They made a misplay. Any creature they sacrifice to the Carrion Feeder is going to grow the Beetle as well, and currently their Feeder is smaller than the Beetle. So unless they had like a 0 mana spell that did something, they've just thrown away the Carrion Feeder. Luckily for them, they don't go so far as to like sack a bunch of creatures and grow our Beetle, but like they do throw away their Feeder for no gain here, which is pretty rough.
That is rough. A couple draws here, which it looks like you picked up a couple of treasure creators, but not a way to sack them, or 1 treasure creator and an unearth. Is that?
Yep. Yeah. Shambling Ghast and an unearth. Obviously, if they'd been holding up the reunions, the unearth would feel worse. We can't, but we don't have the ability to get a Feeder because they have gotten rid of that. So we unearth a Shambler here and just swing in for 4. Of course, they have 4 creatures on board, but again, none of them can block. So they're looking to be in a tough spot here.
Was there any consideration into cycling the unearth there, like a random card being better than Shambling Ghast, or not Nested Shambler? Sorry,
Nested Shambler. I don't think so. Obviously, if I cycle it into a Carrion Feeder, I would prefer that. But like the chances of a random card being better than our best fodder creature, I think, is low. So I think it's a good question, but I think I would probably use it there every time, unless maybe they had mana up for a reunion that I would anticipate here.
Mask of Long Grace there, but no treasure yet.
Yeah, so we have 2 pretty good splash cards, but we have a Shambling Ghast on board. They played a Gurmag Angler, which is a 5/5, so our Beetle can't attack in. And I make kind of an interesting play. So my thought is, are they going to attack with this, with like their Gurmag Angler, so I can chump with the Shambling Ghast and get my treasure? And I think no, because they're at a low enough life total, they're going to want to leave it back to block the Beetle. So I instead attack them with the Shambling Ghast, because if they block it, I get my treasure, and if they don't block it, I get 1 free damage in.
Yeah.
And they go for the block, giving me the treasure. And I have a Teamer Battle Rage, which now that they have a 5/5 Gurmag Angler is not looking as good. So I just decide to slam the Mask of Law and Grace on the Beetle here because it's a blocker forever. And also it's going to be unblockable for the next, forever.
And looking at it from your opponent's perspective, I can kind of see why they would block there. They were probably in their head picturing, okay, maybe he's worried about this outcast, and he just wants to kill off this outcast with the Shambling Ghast, and I'm okay with that trade. And then they go for the block, and then, but it does not pay off.
Yeah, and also he just doesn't want to take any chip damage because I could have like a Rite of Consumption or a Fling or something. So I think that's also reasonable, but it obviously didn't work out great. He does top deck a Jump Palm Polluter. I'm at 15 life. I literally was feeling so good until he cycles a Polluter and deals me 6 damage off of the board. And I'm like, oh, if he gets another Polluter, I just die because like I can block 2 creatures here, but that's 2 zombies and a Changeling Outcast that are getting around my blocks.
Extremely powerful.
I have to hope there's no Polluter, but he attacks with everything. Again, none of them can block the Beetle, but also the Gurmag Angler is the only creature that can block anything. So I think the attack is like somewhat reasonable, but it also depends on what he has in hand.
Right. Yeah, at this point you're concerned, okay, what if they have a burn spell in hand or even any kind of burn spell. But also it also kind of feels like an all-out attack because they know that with you having that Mask of Law and Grace, it's just a matter of time before you can attack in for the damage that you need to finish them off.
Yeah, and I block as much damage as I can here, the Gurmag Angler and one of the zombies, but I specifically want the zombies to survive the combat damage so that they will sacrifice to their trigger and grow the Beetle. Because if I blocked the opposite way, Nested Shambler on the Gurmag Angler and the Beetle on a zombie, the zombie would have died in combat and not sacrificed. So I actually get really 3 counters on my Beetle here,
which makes you lethal.
I have lethal on board, but I didn't even realize it at first because I was so set on this Beetle needing to be lethal. It's only a 7/7 here that I literally was like, how do I get one more counter on this? And then I realized, oh, he attacked with everything. So I just said, I will attack you for 8 damage. And he extends the hand there. So clearly didn't have anything in hand.
Really heads up play though. Yeah, if you would have killed off one of those zombies, you wouldn't have had lethal there and would have potentially been risking losing on the back end.
I believe he flipped and maybe saw like a Crawl from the Cellar next and would have gotten a Jump Palm Polluter, which a lot of zombies were gone, so it might not have been quite lethal, but that's from hundreds and maybe thousands of hours of playing Black Sack that I'm like, I need to make sure that I know exactly how a Rotten Reunion token operates because I play them, and I need to be able to make sure it will grow my Beetle here.
All right. And that makes you the winner of your second dual land.
Yeah, so I got a Badlands for winning this event. Previously, I've won a Trop, which is nice. I do think that I played decently throughout the event. I think there are some places where I could have played a little bit better. It's nice to look back on because I'm like I can identify those and try to improve for the future. And so but I was pretty happy overall.
Yeah, no, it was a lot of impressive play from both you and your opponents. Some really good matchups. I don't know how much the rainbow sideboard helped you, except it definitely helped you in that last game. So it is what helped you cross the finish line.
It is, yeah. I think throughout it didn't feel as good as it was supposed to. We didn't do as much with it as we were hoping. It was good in that last match. The question is, if I just had a more solid Black Sack stock list that was going a little bit faster and didn't have the treasure makers to like muddle up the gameplay, would I have even needed it? I'm not exactly sure. So there's still, I played quite a few matches with this version now, and I'm still thinking that there's more testing to be done to know if it's really like, I don't think it's better than the stock list, but like, is it good enough to be better in the right meta? And I don't have a conclusion at this moment. So.
Right. Yeah. Though I do want to give a shout out to the store for hosting us. Cards on Sixth, great store. If you're ever in Lancaster, Ohio, or just Central Ohio in general, great store to visit. Very, very supportive staff there. It was an overall great experience. They were so super friendly about us recording these games. Not just not just welcoming to it, but even just like supportive of it. And they bought us some breakfast, and it was an awesome experience. So thank you again for Cards on 6th. And if you're ever again in that area, please check it out.
I think that's it. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll see you next time.
All right. Bye now.